Welcome back to another heart to heart conversation. And wow, I never thought here's the day we're having a heart to heart conversation, Marissa and Marissa. So cool. And we just met recently, but wow, what I know of you and how you show up in the world is, I think of pure love. And you can read the Instagram bio, self-love coach, life coach. But really, Marissa, yeah, like you just embody love. And so I'm so grateful to have you on for this February love series. And really, where I like to start with folks, and kind of I'm adding this in for heart to heart conversations, is what makes you tick? Like, what makes your heart come alive?
I like that. I was having a conversation with someone else earlier this morning about that, and I know it sounds weird, but it's like, but me. Like that's like the best way to describe it. It's like when I am me, the more me I am, the more alive I become. And there's certain things which I could describe and be like, I don't know why, but I'm like, oh, I can describe that as me, right? The different styles of clothes I can wear, I'm like, oh, that's me, that's not, right? The different music I listen to, that's me, that's not, right? How I set up my environment in my home, that's me, that's not. And it's not that one's right or wrong. It's just that a certain part of me feels so alive and light and makes me tick when I connect to those different things of me. So there's so many different things in so many different areas of life, but they're all little parts of me. And I don't understand it, but that's the best way I can describe it.
Oh, I love it. Well, and I feel like that's such a good starting point, right, for diving into love and your own self-love journey, because I'm sure there were times where maybe you were lost and you didn't really know what that me, quote unquote, was. So, can you tell us kind of the story behind the glory of when was your rock bottom or a low point for you where you realized, oh my gosh, I don't love myself?
Oh, so many of them. I'm very human. I'm always learning and growing and going through things. Right now, I'm learning and growing and going through things. So I'm going to always be hitting different points of, oh, I love myself, and then, oh, I don't. Oh, I'm connected. Oh, I'm not. Oh, there's something else here that I don't accept. Oh, but I'm fine. Right. So it's really interesting. It's always going to be growing and changing. But when I was younger and growing up, I was very disconnected from myself emotionally. I I was raised in a large family in a small religious community, and I was homeschooled all through high school. So one of the things I learned, being the oldest girl, the second oldest kid, just subconsciously, was there wasn't space for my emotions. There wasn't space for me to feel and connect to myself. And loving yourself is a connection to yourself. So at the beginning, I didn't even realize that I wasn't loving myself because I was so disconnected from myself. But when I left religion, when I was 19, 20, and was trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life, thought I wanted to. I thought I loved myself. I thought I was all connected. I thought I was loving myself by getting into fitness and health, and that was me taking care of my body. But looking back now, subconsciously, it was 100% that I didn't love myself. I didn't know my value and my worth. I wasn't connected to myself. And all I knew was, well, if I take care of myself and I have a fit, sexy body for the rest of my life, hopefully people will love me. Society accepts these people. So I've got to figure that out, because otherwise, what do I have? So it's interesting going through that fitness and health journey. And over the years, I was at different places where I loved myself and I didn't. And sometimes I loved myself purely because of my body. Other times I hated myself purely because of my body. Sometimes I didn't care about my body and I loved myself because of other aspects of me. And other times I hated myself because of other aspects of me. So it's interesting how they all kind of tie together, but there wasn't an official ever, here's that one moment of rock bottom, which I'm like, oh my gosh, my life just fell apart. It was just a series of them where I would fall into unconscious behaviors, unloving actions, and then I'd become aware of, oh, I'm not living in a place of love. Oh, I'm living in a place of trying to people please and have other people love and accept me rather than me loving, accepting me. Oh, those clothes that I said that make me feel alive and light, I'm not wearing those. I'm wearing this other thing because I think somebody else is going to like me better that way. So just starting to observe myself and the different patterns and the different actions I would take started to really show me where I was loving myself and where I was living in that place of avoiding looking at what really myself was and avoiding looking at self-love and using all those numbing behaviors just because I wasn't in that place of self-love. So it's been a ride. There's definitely been some ups and some downs. Some of the downs are way lower than others. But it's like, I mean, some of my rock bottom moments would literally just be sitting in the kitchen, just another random day of emotional eating, nothing crazy, and opening the fridge and being like, holy shit, I can't stop from eating carrots and hummus. Right. And being like, where's that? Or it'd be like, oh my goodness, I just ate 2 tubs of ice cream. Right. Some people might not be like, that's a rock bottom to them, but it would be those massive moments of awareness where I would just be like, oh yeah, huh. And sometimes that would be enough to kind of push me out of it. Other times I would sit in that rock bottom and be like, I'm going to stay here because I don't want to change.
Oh, aren't we funny?
And that's okay. I think it's part of the human journey and the thing is that we learn to love and live and grow, and it's not going to be a perfect journey. And I think that that's one of the other things also, like now being this self-love and this life coach, I understand on an intellectual all of these things. I've done the research. I know how it works. So why is it that I can't do it? It's like a personal trainer who knows how the body works but doesn't work out. It's like the nutritionist who understands nutrition and the right things to eat, but then they still don't do them. It's like, well, why? Right? It's like we can know all the things on an intellectual level, but when we really dive deep and realize like, okay, these are just certain parts of this human journey, we say like, well, what is this human journey anyways? Like, who am I? What am I? What is my purpose? Like, what's the whole point of life anyways? It's like massive questions. And you realize that there's not just I'll figure out the information and I'll never have to deal with the rock bottom again. It's like, they're just continuous, and that's okay. I think that's the key. I'm just sitting here right now. I'm like, yeah, I can feel that. Like, that's something in my heart right now. I'm like, if I can just settle into peace, at being at peace with knowing I'm going to hit more rock bottoms, maybe at, like I said, different levels, but that's okay. And they're just there to help remind me that I'm not in a place of self-love and then to return to love. So, yeah.
And oh my gosh, I resonate with so many parts of your story and what you shared. And just thank you for being so open about, about what the emotional eating, the body shaming, those parts of your story, because I think it's like, that's my mission with heart to heart conversations, is to kind of to talk about those things that maybe we don't normally talk about just out in the open. It might be in a one-on-one conversation with someone that we trust, but to really allow others to see the whole human experience, all parts of us, right? Because I could look at your Instagram, and I mean, you're really great about sharing from the heart, but I think social media just it amplifies the perfectionism, the comparison, all of that, where it's like, oh, they have their life together. They don't have to deal with those hard moments, those moments after they've eaten 2 tubs of ice cream and are wondering what's the point of life, right? But I think we all, in some aspect, go through that. And I know personally, as a 23-year-old, I've been asking myself that question of what is the point and why am I here? And not from a dark place, but more from like I know there's more, and there's more to this life. There's more to me.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. And when you sit with those and those kind of come up, what are the little things that kind of spark in your heart?
I think for me, I mean, what makes me tick is this connection, this intimacy, like diving deeper with someone through a conversation, a deep, meaningful conversation. That's when I'm like, oh, this is why we're here. It's the relationships. It's realizing that we aren't alone, whatever we're going through, and that there are people out there like you, Marissa, who have and are continuing to be on their self-love journey and are there to show you that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And we don't know how long the tunnel is, but that you can pick yourself up and dust yourself off. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but I love that you're so raw and real about, it's not like you've mastered self-love and just checked it off the list.
No, I think it's like you learn things, you figure them out, but it's like we have to sometimes just keep living through it again and again. It's like you said, like we know it intellectually that, oh, we're never gonna quote unquote make it until we die, right? Then we're done. Like there's always going to be a life to-do list, another thing to do. But sometimes we don't let that knowledge in the head sink down to the heart and really resonate with that and allow that to sink in and realize like, oh yeah, that's right. I am never going to make it. It is okay for me to keep messing this up. And yeah, maybe I'd prefer to mess it up a little bit less because that's going to help me have different experiences in life, which is also okay, right? Consciously choosing the experiences you want. And so saying no thank you to the other experiences, but also realizing that there's no musts, there's no shoulds. We don't have to figure this out by a certain time. And even though we have all the knowledge up here in the head and we understand it that intellectually, it may take us 5 years, 10 years, 20 years for it to sink down to the heart to really, really understand it on that heart level. And that's okay. Maybe not comfortable, but that's okay.
Yeah, I think that's huge to recognize. Oh, healing is not linear and it's not like, okay, self-love next, it's a journey. And I would love to hear too, in what you were sharing earlier, a question that popped into my mind is, so how do you stay detached in a sense? Because I know for me, yeah, it's like of course I'm gonna love my body when I feel good and look good in a bikini. And then if I'm not gonna love myself as much when, say, I have a breakout. I want to hide and I don't want to show that part of me to people because it doesn't feel lovable.
Yeah, so that's massive. So there's two parts to that I would really say. So like if we break down self-love, right? Self-love is a state, but it's also an action, right? So the best way I think to explain this is like if you think about gratitude, right? You can be grateful, practicing like, oh, I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for clean water. I'm grateful for my friends. That's the action of practicing gratitude, right? Or being grateful. And then you get to being grateful where you're just in a state of it. You're not going through the action of being grateful. You're just grateful, right? So the same thing kind of happens with self-love. There's the actions of self-love, and then you get to this state of self-love. So here's something which I've learned over the years, something I've observed is you can be trying to tell yourself, I love you, on that head level, trying to believe it. But if your actions are not aligned with actually loving yourself the way that you know on that deep level you need to love yourself and you want to love yourself, then you know that you're lying to yourself. And that's where that lack of self-love comes in. And that's where people run into those problems. Like, and for myself, like you said, like being in the bikini, if I'm in the bikini and I haven't been loving myself, if I've been ignoring my body signals, if I've been being lazy, if I've been over scrolling and consciously comparing myself to other people and allowing those thoughts to go, then yeah, I am going to feel really insecure because I've allowed myself to get to that place and I haven't taken the actions that align me with being in that place of real love. And knowing that then, okay, cool, when I do those actions, even if my physical body doesn't align with it, then that's okay because I know I am loving myself on that deep level. And so that's the action side of it, right? Which will then help you get to like that state. But then there's also the belief side of it. And this is where they can get really, really messed up, right? Because you can say, I love you, but not be doing it. And then obviously you won't believe it because yourself's like, no, you're nice try, but that doesn't work, right? But then there's also beliefs that we have about things that are not the truth, but we still believe them to be the truth. We perceive them to be the truth, right? So if society tells us you're not beautiful unless you're this size, is that the truth? No, we know that up here, but still on a level here, part of us still is in that fear. So it's by going through those beliefs and that action of loving yourself also includes the action of mentally going through rewriting those beliefs. And when the story comes up in your mind of saying, I am not lovable because of my body, or I'm not lovable because of the job I'm currently in or the lack of the job. I'm not lovable because I'm single. I'm not lovable because I'm in a relationship. I'm not lovable because whatever. When those beliefs start to come up, the action is catching them, observing them, and then saying, is this the truth? Really sitting in that. And when you go and we realize, is this the truth? We go down and we realize it's not. It's these old subconscious beliefs. It's the old fears, usually that we've learned from childhood and from societal conditioning, which is actually what's coming up and telling us that we're not lovable, which is why we're not loving ourselves, but it's not the actual truth. So that action of, like I said, going through doing the physical actions to love yourself, to take care of your body, to let your mind rest, to give yourself breaks from work, whatever else those actual literal actions are. But there's also then working on the belief side, right? And if we're not conscious of the thoughts that are going through our head, and when we're saying I don't love you, even if it's not the truth, it's just based off of false evidence, right? It still can feel so real. So I think it's multiple parts to it, but it's both ways. It's doing the work. It's either doing the work about literally going out to love yourself on a day-to-day basis, right? Learning like what does like loving your body is learning what does your body want? What kind of movement does it want? What food does it want? How much rest does it need? Right? Loving your body, loving your mind, right? Being on a screen, okay, like that takes a lot of our mental energy, right? So how can I stop scrolling because it's like literally affecting my brain and the subconscious thoughts? How can I choose which TV shows I watch so that way my brain isn't just flooded? How can I, when my mind is tired because I've been working 8 hours today, sit down and just maybe meditate? Is that what my mind wants? Right? So giving our mind and our body what they actually want rather than what we just find easy in the moment, giving it that love, like really loving it takes work, right? Same thing, going through rewriting our beliefs, diving into your subconscious and saying, okay, why is it that I was fine and then somebody said some comment or something on a photo I posted, which doesn't make any sense at all, and somehow it hurt me and I feel like I need to defend myself, right? It's like, why is that the case? Why is it this word bugs me and that one doesn't? Why is it all these other things, right? And it takes work, like
Yeah.
taking the time, diving into taking care of ourselves just on a day-to-day basis and loving ourselves takes work, but also diving into those deep-seated aches and pains that we've learned and picked up through life. Like that takes work to go through that, and it's not comfortable. And it's like a lot of people, they don't want to do it, and that's
Mhm.
okay, because this is something new, and like we're not used to going through this. If you look at the history of human beings, like we're not used to having all this time to sit down and realize like, oh, I can go through my childhood trauma. Oh, I can look at all these things about like my relationship with myself, my body, and all these other things. We're just used to surviving. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like this is a new thing. So really giving yourself compassion, but it's going to be uncomfortable. And it's like, it's again one of those things, like we can understand in our head, oh yeah, that's right, I can be comfortable being uncomfortable, but until you experience it and it sinks into your being, and then you're like, oh, this is what it means to be getting comfortable being uncomfortable. It's like, it's a whole new thing. And when I say that, like, who's ever listening, like you will either know, you're like, maybe I know what it's like to be comfortable to be uncomfortable. If that's what you're thinking, you haven't got there yet. And when you are uncomfortable being uncomfortable, you're like, oh, okay, now I've been there, right? I've never had kids, but I've heard it's fucking painful. Right? So it's the same kind of thing. It's like if you're a mom who's gone through labor, had a baby, you're like, oh, that hurts. And then me as someone who's never had kids, I can be like, oh yeah, of course that hurts. But I don't know. I've never experienced that. And when you experience that being uncomfortable and being okay with it, it's that whole new level of, oh, okay, that's what this is. And that's really when
Yeah.
you're going to dive into all that. That's really when you get to dive into all that deep healing with self. And that's really when you get to those new levels of self-love, is when you're willing to be uncomfortable and go through the pain and realize everything that's underneath there. Because like I said, growing up, like I wasn't even aware I didn't love myself because I didn't feel anything.
Whoa.
So yeah.
And that's why it's so key. I think what you're speaking to is part of the journey is that, yeah, it's going to be freaking uncomfortable. And that's why it's so key to have guides, mentors, coaches, these tribes, these communities who have walked through that path and who are there to walk alongside you and hold your hand and be like, it's okay. If you're scared and if you are angry and all these emotions are coming up for you, it's part of the journey. And yeah, I think of the birth analogy too, right? It's like, we aren't meant to do this alone. There's a reason we have doctors and nurses and surgeons and all these experts. And look at us as coaches. We have literally devoted our lives to supporting people on this journey, whatever it may be, self-love. Some people it might be the spiritual awakening. It depends on what people are wanting to prioritize in their lives and what they value.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's just so cool to see human beings on our journeys, exploring who we are, our gifts we have, how to live in love and light up the world. is really cool. And like you said, like we all need that tribe, that community of some kind, right? Someone to help support us as we go through. And like that's been something which has been also massive for me on my self-love journey, was realizing, like you said, I don't have to do it alone,
Hmm.
right? The amount of therapists, the amount of coaches the amount of people I've had who have helped give me the piece of the puzzle, who've helped me understand, oh, this is where it's from, right? The amount of philosophy I've read, like, thank God for Plato, right? I couldn't think through all those things, right? So like the amount of things that we as human beings, like we have our specific gifts, we have our set of knowledge, but we have a choice of either finding that support system, that tribe, those people who have the other gifts and the knowledge that we don't, or if we try to do it alone, that's another way that we're actually not loving ourselves, because we are putting the pressure on ourselves and expecting ourselves to do everything, when the reality is we're like I said, I'm me. I'm not a dentist. I don't fix my teeth. When I'm feeling really off and I've tried to fix it through movement and food and sleep and everything else, my physical body, I take it to see a doctor, right? I could spend all my life studying medicine and then do that for myself, but then it means I can't do what my gifts are. So I think that that's like another massive piece to the self-love, is asking for help and surrounding ourselves with the people who have the gifts to be able to help us be that best version of ourselves and be able to love ourselves, because other people have the tools and the knowledge that we need, because like we don't have, like I don't have it all. My
Yeah.
brain's very logical. It's not built for the random creative sides and fun new explorations and things. But you know how much, whenever I see art and listen to music, you know how much that lights me up? It's amazing. There's no way I could ever create that. So I've relied on other people and allowed them to help serve me with that. And that is another way that we love ourselves, is going back to saying, how can I accept all these gifts from other people to help me be my best self without being like, I need to do it all alone.
It's humbling. It's humbling to realize, oh, maybe I can't do this on my own, and I do need other people. And I think, like you said, it is probably one of the most honoring things that you can do for yourself is to open up, receive for no, well, first ask for help, but then also receive and let others be a contribution to you. It's huge.
For sure. For sure. What's one way in your life that you're currently open to accepting all the help and support from your tribes and your people?
Oh, such a good question. One way that I'm open. Well, I found that this week in particular, what I'm doing is I'm reaching out to friends who I see as they're like one or two steps ahead of me in my journey. And instead of being like, oh, they don't have time for me, I'm a burden, all those stories, right? I'm reaching out and I'm like for example, before this call, I reached out and to a friend and I was like, hey, yo, teach me your ways. How did you create an online portal? Right. And she's more than happy to help me. Or one of my other friends I reached out to her via Instagram and I was like, hey, like, I just need some help externally processing this. And rather than staying in my head, which to be fair, I did that for a couple of days, but then finally I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to reach out. And she thanked me for reaching out. And so it just feels so good to open myself up in that way.
So beautiful. Would you say that you've hit a new level of self-love now that you've allowed yourself to do that?
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny that you asked that because I guess I didn't see it as self-love, but now that we're talking about it, I'm like, huh, that is like very loving to Marissa and to me and yeah, respecting just my humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, when I was working as a personal trainer, it was interesting because I would work with people. I would train them sometimes 2, 3, 4 times a week, right? And I remember something that I had multiple people say to me on multiple different occasions was they're like, it's just showing up to the gym. They're like, why can't I just make myself do this? Like, I must be like, why should I spend money on a trainer, someone to keep me accountable? As long as I could just make myself show up, that, like, why can't I just do that? And I'm like, you know what? It's amazing that you know yourself enough to know that this is a hard thing for you. And and it's important for you. So because of that, you're going to outsource this and hire someone to make sure you do it. I was like, that's amazing. I was like, you know how much that is self-management right there. Self-management isn't forcing yourself to go to the gym when you know, based off of all the other stressors in your life, you just wouldn't make it happen. Self-management is knowing I need help with this and hiring someone to do it for you. Like, I was like, that's amazing. It's like, you know yourself and you love yourself enough to know I've got to figure out how to make this happen, and I can ask for help.
Mm.
And I think that that's something else too, like even just in like my journey too, like you were mentioning, you're like feeling bad about asking people for help. But even just for myself, I was like, it's okay if I go get help. But there were certain things that I counted as, this counts as a good investment in asking for help, and this isn't acceptable. This is something I should figure out, right? So for example, childhood traumas, right? I would know, okay, these are affecting me. I would go see a therapist for those, right? And then figuring out nutrition stuff, perfect, I'd hire a nutritionist, right? But then I would say, okay, I'm still having problems with binge eating. The nutritionist has taught me everything, but there was like that shame behind it. And it was like, no, I've already spent money on nutritionist. I know what I'm supposed to do. So no more money, because I just have to do it now myself, rather than realizing I just needed that accountability. And money, energy, time, anything you put into these things for yourself and helping other people help you love yourself, I don't think that there's any limit to it. Yes, obviously you know what your finite resources in this physical world right now they currently are, right? But saying, how could you create abundant resources for yourself, and then realizing, like, what are the things that actually help add and bring that value back to you, and how can you allow yourself to have that help even when things get crazy? Because like things, like I said, like we talked about before, like you're always going to be hitting another rock bottom. You're always going to be needing someone else to help you. It's not like you ask for help once and then you're done. But for me, for some reason, I thought that that was the case. I was like, no, I've already figured this out. Now I've got to do it. Right? It's like there's going to be some things in life I'm never going to figure out, and that's okay. There's going to be some things in life I'm always going to need to go to someone and ask for help. To like, hey, I'm just way too emotionally involved in this. Can you help me think through it? Hey, this pattern of belief still keeps coming up again and again. Can you coach me through this? Hey, I forgot to brush my teeth. I have another cavity. Can you fix it for me? Right? Like, I'm gonna mess up, right? It's gonna happen. And like we talked about, like having, like, it's okay to ask for help, but it's also okay to ask for help again and again and again for the same things that we've already thought we learned and we still just can't figure out. And that's okay. It's not that we're stupid. It's not that we're not trying. It's that for some reason we have to just try other things, right? I was figuring out, like, I was in like the depths of like my emotional eating and my binge eating disorder for like 10 years. And I remember like there was like one like 6-month period where things were like awesome. And I was like, I didn't think about food. And I remember there was days I'd woke up and be like, I'm like, how have I not thought about either what I'm going to eat next or how to stop myself from eating? Like, it was just like food was my entire life for so many years. And then it was like I had 6 months where it's like I didn't think about it. I was like, oh my goodness, like this is what this feels like. But during that time, I didn't, some of the times I was asking for help, but there's other times where looking back, if I had asked for more help, that would have been the loving thing for myself. The loving thing for myself wasn't saying, all right, Marissa, now go love yourself and do it. It was saying, I still need help. And it's like that fine line between when do we need help and going and asking for it, and when is it that we already really know and we have the tools and we have the support in place. And it's not about outsourcing our healing anymore and asking for help. It's about getting up, being in the uncomfortable, saying, I love you enough, Marissa, that I'm going to do this, and moving forward. Because there were also those times, there was times where I didn't ask for help when I needed it, but there was also times where I was still asking for help when what I had to do was take responsibility for myself and just do the tough things.
That, oh, I'm so glad you made that distinction, because I still am figuring that out, where I'm like trying to find that balance between, okay, Marissa, you've got this. You are a strong, capable woman, and sometimes you don't need to turn to external resources to figure this out. You can just look within. Because I know for a fact there have been times in my past where it's easier to just hop on a phone call with a friend or even, look up a podcast or read a book and have them tell me the answers and them dictate my life rather than me actually sit, tune in, slow down, get quiet and listen to what it is that would be most loving for me, like the most loving next action to take. It's so much easier to just, all right, tell me what to do. I don't want to tell myself what to do because what if it goes wrong?
Yeah, no, it's so funny. I was talking with a friend about this. She's her and her husband, I trained them back in the gym. They were clients for around a year and a half, a couple years back. And then this fall, when Kathleen and I back in fall 2020, we went for some hikes out in Alberta up in the mountains, and we chatted with them. And that was one thing that she said. She's like, yeah, she's like, I remember, she shared the story with me. She's like, I remember there was the one day where I was like, no, I always need to eat my chocolate. And you're like, well, why don't you just try one day not eating it? And I was like, no, I have to do it. Like, this is always the way it is. And she's like, I got really, really frustrated around that. And then somewhere through that conversation, that realization, like she realized like, oh, like I'm outsourcing my healing and expecting other people to fix this or tell me the method or whatever else, where the reality is I just have to take responsibility for myself and just try, like, what happens if I don't eat it? See, right? And that's sometimes what it is it's learning through trial and error, right? Like you said, like get a general idea. Where am I going, right? Like maybe if you're planning to grow a garden, don't start by building a sandbox. Like, I mean, maybe it'll start as a sandbox, turn into a garden, like that's fine, right? But like get a general idea where you're going. But then if you're seeing all the specialists on how to build the perfect garden and doing all the final like little research, it's like sometimes you just got to start. Try it,
Yes.
right? It's like, well, why am I not starting? Why do I feel like I need more knowledge before I start taking action on this, right? It's the same thing with like the self-love stuff, right? We're like, oh, but I don't know, maybe this, maybe that, maybe actually that's loving myself, maybe not. It's like, just pick something and start. Because
Mm.
so much of what like what we learn is through experience. And there's a lot of amazing knowledge out there. And if you don't have knowledge of where you're going, there are some basic things to start, then yeah, you got to go start with by getting some knowledge. But for the most part, we all know a couple things that we need to do to either get to where we want or to grow and heal or to love ourselves more. And to be quite frank, sometimes we just don't want to do it. And we're like, maybe if I keep looking, I'll find other new evidence that's recently come out that says, actually, you don't have to eat healthy foods and move your body and sleep. I can actually watch all the TV in the world. I can actually gossip away and have horrible relationships, and then I'll still be happy. It's like, no, like we know that's not going to happen. So why is it we keep looking for more evidence of other ways that we're going to be, that we could love ourselves and maybe not take responsibility for self? It's like, it's not going to happen. It's just, we just don't like to do the hard stuff sometimes. And that's okay. It's very human of us, right? I
Yeah.
don't like to do the hard stuff. Like the amount of times I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this.
Make me.
Yeah, I know. I literally have those conversations with myself, and then I'm like, all right, Marissa. It's like you think about like the parent where like the kid's like sitting there, it's like, I don't want to go. And the mom's like, all right, and we're leaving. It's like I literally do that. I have those conversations with myself, kicking and screaming. Like the first half of the walk, if I'm taking myself for an evening walk, first half of my walk, I'll be like, I don't want to do this. Let's just go home. And then like you get to the halfway point, you turn around and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm halfway. So I've got to go home.
Maybe I'm actually enjoying this. Wow, what a concept.
Yeah, that, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's funny.
I'm curious, how has your self-love journey and romantic relationships, like what's the intersectionality there? I would love to hear kind of the path, obviously of your self-love journey, but then also like the romantic relationships that you've attracted into your life.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I've never really been like someone to like casually date. Everyone who I dated I was like, in my mind was like, of course I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with this person. That's just how my brain decides to work, right? And it's not that it's like I have to, and otherwise everything's gonna, it's like, no, but it's like, but if I couldn't see the end, if I was like, okay, I can see myself breaking up with you in 20 years, I'd be like, well, then what's the point right now anyways? That's just how I work. I've got other friends who they're like, oh yeah, they're like, I love those relationships that last for 2 months. That's awesome. I'm all for everything. It's a matter of just jumping in and figuring like what works well for you, right? I was just someone who was like, no, like I'm kind of like looking for a life partner. That's just kind of was my own thoughts and what I was looking for. So I've actually only had like 3 relationships my entire life. And like the first fellow was like first guy I ever dated, ever kissed. I dated him for like a year and a half. Second fellow I met in, so the first one was a guy, second one's a guy, third one's a girl, just so that way people know they've got that figured out. Second one, I met him in college when I was studying for fitness and health promotion, right? So again, like I said, like at that time, like I subconsciously was still getting a lot of my validation based off of my body. So naturally, the things that I was attracted to were a little bit different, right? I was kind of trying to figure out, I was homeschooled all my life. So I was trying to figure out, how do I be a normal person in society? Because I was a little weird in some ways, like growing up, like, but here's the cool thing is like, I knew I was weird, but I was aware I was weird, right? So I would just kind of like sit there quietly and observe other people. Anyways, that's a whole other side story. But what I was like, at that point, I was starting to like I was in normal society, let's call it at that point, right? So like the things I was attracted to were things that of normal society, kind of like how I wanted my body to be accepted by normal society. I think subconsciously the relationship I was looking for was something that would be accepted by normal society. So of course, I went with the really hot jacked guy who was lots of fun and all that, and it was great. Like we had lots of fun, and like when that was where both of our journeys were going, it was awesome. But definitely we hit a point in our relationship where, and same thing, like I unconsciously, subconsciously, I had no idea. I was like, this isn't right for me anymore, right? And like we literally within the span, I think we got our we were together for almost 3 years, but within the span of 3 months we moved into like the last 3 months that we were together, we moved into an apartment together. Is I think sometime in probably September, and then by January we were separated, and I was like going off to do like my own work on myself, because I was like, basically what happened was I was just like, I came to realize that I didn't think I was worthy and good enough, and I thought I was like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I'm all messed up. I just guess I'm not good enough for this relationship. So I was like, I'm going to go take myself, work on myself. And I thought that when I did that, then I would become good enough, quote unquote, to go back into that relationship. And what I realized was, and like through this, like all my other like my subconscious patterns of like self-sabotage, all these other things, like looking back, there were so many signs that I wasn't happy. But again, like I was still pretty disconnected from myself emotionally, right? Probably until the past like 3 years, I would cry once, twice a year, maybe that. I cry like a couple times a week now. It's not, it's not that I didn't have that before. It's just that I just didn't know how to express it, right? Like my whole being from years of suppression, that being that was what kept me safe when I was a kid. Like that's what made me survive. Those were my survival instincts, things that I learned. But then what it meant was that I would be very like, at the end there, I didn't realize I wasn't happy in this relationship. I thought that I wasn't good enough. I thought I wasn't being loving enough. I thought that I had to give more to this relationship, right? And what actually happened was I just was giving all my stuff to this relationship, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I was just so disconnected from my heart, I didn't even realize that, right? It was at the beginning, it was, yeah, this is something I thought I wanted, all these other things. But then by the end, it was like, no, like, this is when I was starting to like think more about life, my purpose, take time to really connect and be quiet and dig into myself. And it was like, oh, interesting. So it was neat. Like I did the relationship rebuilding course. So I left that relationship and took a couple months and was like, okay, I'm gonna go work on myself.
Yeah.
And like I told you, it's like there was like a 6-month period where I didn't have any thoughts or any things about food. Like I wasn't at all worried about it or thinking about it. And it was those 6 months, they started in January when I first left that relationship and did this relationship rebuilding course. And it was because all that emotional eating, all that binge eating, all those other self-sabotage behaviors that people call them, right? It was happening for a reason. It wasn't just happening, right? Yes, when you eat a lot of sugar, it messes up your chemistry and your hormones, and that will make you eat more sugar. That's a very real thing, right? But a lot of it was, I just wanted to be loved. I was just craving to be okay and good with myself. I just wanted to connect with myself. So as soon as I suddenly actually started doing the things for me that I wanted to be doing and feeding my heart was like, we're full. We don't need ice cream. Right.
Wow.
So it was really cool to like see that and observe that. And then that was in like January, right? And I like left and then realized like, oh my goodness, I went on like a solo 3 week backpacking trip. I did all these things for myself. I was still alive. And then I came back and my best friend from before, we were hanging out all the time. While I was on that trip, I was like, holy shit, I'm in love with my best friend. That was a whole other new thing, right? I've never been with a woman, right? Neither had she.
Yeah.
It's amazing what 3 bottles of wine will do. But it was like, yeah, like, and like, but realizing like by taking that time to connect to myself and love myself, the more I did that, then the more I was able to also find the person who allowed me and called me to be more of me. Like we said at the beginning, like, what's that thing that makes you tick? Me being me makes me tick, right? Part of me being me is I fucking love this woman so much. Like, like the amount that she like I'm just getting teary. I just think that it's like the amount that she, by being her, allows me to be me, and the amount that I love her is it's an expression of me, right? It's really beautiful where that's at. And it's like me loving her is part of my self-love, and me allowing her to love me is also part of my self-love, right? Being with that person on that emotional level, on that physical level, is part of that self-love for me.
Mm.
And it's been really, really cool to see that and realize like the relationships that you have, those I've come to learn they're not separate from self-love. They're expressions of self-love and expressions of love, and others love it. It's love is love, right? But
Yeah.
it's not like I'm just loving her for her. It's like part of me being me right now in my life, I really believe, is me loving her. And I know that because I'm feeling it all. I'm feeling the aches, I'm feeling the pains, I'm feeling the ups and the downs. And it's really cool to see, right? And like I said, like there were 6 months where I was like, yeah, it's like I had no problems around food. And then I remember to the day I went home and visited my family. I went back home and something snapped, something clicked, right? And it was going back home, all those old patterns, those old beliefs, those old fears. And I came home and I was like, something's changed, right? And so like we talked about like those rock bottoms, like where are they? When do they happen? Like that was one of my rock bottoms when I went home and was like, fuck, I'm stuck again now. How do I get back through this, right? So how do I can I learn to feel these feelings and process them and allow myself to really love me well, feeling and experiencing everything. It's like it's hard, right? And like that relationship is that I'm in with my girlfriend now, it's been beautiful because she's taught me how to love myself, but she's also loved me enough to let me go, and has really taught me how she can only love me as much as I love me, which is another really, really beautiful thing.
Mm.
Um, because yeah, like I know she will always love me, but if I'm only loving myself 50%, then there's only really that 50% of me that's really alive in there is how much she can really love, because the rest of it is just kind of like a shadow me. It's not really
Mm.
me, right? So it's been really beautiful to realize also like the more like her allow like myself allowing her to love me, but also her realizing that she can't love me to replace me loving me,
Yeah.
right? And like yeah, I've been in codependency lots of times. If you go back on our we've talked about on Instagram before, right? And realizing that like I've been dependent on food, I've been dependent on people and relationships, I've been dependent on TV. And that's like sometimes I complain, I'm like, why is it that I'm just so fucking sensitive? Like, can't I just like figure it out and all that and not be dependent on these things? I'm like, yeah, well, like I'm really sensitive to these things, right? Like I have like other people are sensitive to alcohol. They can't handle a single drink. I'm sensitive to TV. Sometimes I can't watch a single episode, otherwise it'll mess me up for days. And maybe I can say like that's unfair, but that's just how I work, and realizing like, okay, so then what's the loving thing for me? Right.
Mm.
And figuring out how can I do that and how can I show up and be that loving self for me, but also for her. And then how can I allow her to love me for me, but also for her? It's like it's yeah, love is very interesting, and it's just cool to see what happens when you love yourself enough to allow yourself to be full of joy. When you love yourself enough to love everything to go amazing and right. When you love yourself enough to allow yourself to step into your full glory and just feel like your true self, it's so beautiful. right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we think self-love is, oh, it means I have to do all these things, right? Yes, they're actions. Yes, they're things you have to do to take care of yourself. But really, those things are just expressions of love for yourself. And when you express those loves for yourself, then all the other love comes. And like just the being that you are and how much you will light up and how much you then will make yourself tick. It's amazing. And there's not one thing that you can do that will just make it happen other than just being you.
Mm,
So,
yeah, that's what something that I feel like is a theme throughout this conversation is that allowance, and permission to be yourself. I mean, you started out talking about what makes you tick is you being you, and that allowance of, wow, this is my most authentic me. And even if that meant like, yeah, dating two guys and then dating a woman, right? Like stepping fully into all of you and who you are in this world and allowing yourself to feel that joy and to do something totally out of the ordinary, but also something that felt so right and so good and true for you.
yeah, it's been amazing. It's been pretty cool. And
Hmm.
yeah, I'm so grateful for it. It's one of those things like we often say, like, it's okay to not be okay, for sure. And I totally agree with that. And like, there's times where I'm not okay, right? Like I said, like literally, there's always something going on in my life. Like right now, I'm processing through different emotional, my own hurts and pains and other things, right? And that's okay. But it's also okay to be fucking awesome. It's okay to have your heart just be full. It's okay to not have all these other crazy worries and problems that everybody else is facing. And some people, they that's where they feel comfortable. That's what they keep wanting to do. But we don't have to create turmoil and problems in our life. They'll naturally come. Don't like maybe don't resist them and allow them to happen. But it's like you said, like looking at people's feeds where it's like, oh, like it looks like they have it all together, right? Like I, by all means, don't have it all together, but I'm slowly learning to be okay with it being okay. So a lot of those, like when you see joyful moments on my feed, those are real because I've allowed them to come into my life. I've said no to the other things that don't serve me as much to then make room for these big, beautiful, bright things. So there's like, yes, there's, I think, a certain point where there's like toxic positivity where like everything's great all the time. It's not. The amount of pain that I'm going, like there's certain things that like I'm going through. Like I can like I'm very happy sharing like we talked about before here because there anything that you want to share and I was like I don't know like what'll come up but like I was raised religious, right? So me now being with Kathleen, my fiance, you know, like we're getting married, like I just found out a couple weeks ago like my parents aren't going to come to my wedding. Like, you know how like aching, like that just feels my being. Like that hurts. That's real stuff. And I still have to take my time and go through and allow myself to feel it, allow it to process. It's not going to just be a one-time fix and it's done. Like that hurts, right?
Mm.
And realizing like those pains will come up and it's okay. But at the same time, we don't have to choose to live in that. Like I have my pains, but all those joyful things that you see of me, those are all real. And we don't have to be afraid of being the toxic positive person and be like, oh, maybe I should dim myself down. Oh, maybe I shouldn't be as healthy because then they're going to think all I care about is my body and my health. Maybe I shouldn't be as much of an entrepreneur and work really, really hard and build this business and be super successful because then they're going to think all I think about is money. Like, no, like shine your light, be bright. It's okay to be okay. It's good. And the more you that you're you, the more you're going to inspire other people to do that. Like, it's okay to be happy. It's okay to be full of joy. It's okay to love yourself and to have the life you want. We don't have to dim ourselves or hold back. Like, our hearts are made to be full. So,
You are totally speaking to my heart. I'm just like buzzing over here, like, yes, preach it. This is so good. I can't wait for the listeners to hear this. And we're just, there's so much value in here. I want to make sure as we wrap up, too, if there was anything maybe that we didn't get to that you would like to share, a question that I didn't ask, or just something you'd like to pop in here at the end.
no, I think, yeah, I think it's just been my own journey. The one thing, like I said, that's made the biggest difference is me just being me. And it's a little uncomfortable the first couple times that you start to show up as you and say what is on your heart and speak just from those places of love and let your gift shine. Because we're scared that we're going to be rejected, but the more you're you, the more you'll be able to shine through it, and the easier it will be to love yourself. Because if you're portraying a shadow of yourself or a dimmed down version of yourself, of course it's going to be hard to fall in love with yourself, because you're going to know deep down I'm fucking awesome and I'm not being that person. So be you, just be you, shine bright. I don't know where that came
Mm.
from, but I started signing off my emails a couple months back, probably like half a year ago now, just putting like shine bright, don't dim yourself, just be you, shine bright. So that
I love that. Shine bright like a diamond. Maybe it's from that song. I don't know.
I just use the sunshine emoji because that's me.
I love it. Be you unapologetically. I hope that that is a main takeaway from this. And also for those of you who are listening, we would love to hear from you and see you shining bright on social media. If you're listening to this, tag us, screenshot it, write your takeaways, how you're loving yourself. We love hearing the impact of our words and, of us sharing our journey and our hearts with you and how it's impacting your life. So we would love to hear from you. Thank you, Marissa, for being on. And how can people connect with you?
So the best place to connect with me is on Instagram. You can follow me, marissa.hammond, and you can check out my website, Marissa Hammond Coaching, if you're interested about that. I've got everything from a free 7-day self-love challenge on there to just other thoughts, and you can reach out and connect to me if you do want to do working with me. There's an application process, but I help people learn how to take responsibility for themselves, change their limiting beliefs, and learn how to implement habits and strategies so they really can be themselves and live the life they want to live. So that's
And,
me.
and shine bright, just like she does in the world.
Yes, do your version. Do it your way. If you do it my way, there's a lot of crazy talking sometimes. So maybe don't, if you don't feel like you're a talker, that's okay. You don't have to do it my way. Do it your way.
Precisely. Yes, what you said. You do you, you do it your way. Thank
Yes.
you so much. This has been just such a blast.
Thank you.